In the 10th year since I was trafficked, I returned home. But the loving mom and dad I remembered had completely changed. In order to make their adopted daughter happy, they treated me coldly and counted on me. When she learned of my suffering, my adoptive mother angrily came to my defense. How dare you bully my daughter? I'm afraid you don't want to live. Behind her, the wantonly flamboyant teenager dissatisfied like erected. Mom. It's daughter-in-law. 10 years ago, when mom and dad took me out to set up a stall, I was taken by human traffickers. After bouncing around several cities, I was lucky enough to get free. I wanted to go home. But I was only 6 years old and couldn't remember the exact address of my home. I could only call the police to help me find them. It took 10 years of searching. When I thought I would never find it again, the police contacted me and said they had found it. I took a taxi to the address given by the police. Standing in front of my familiar home, my heart was extraordinarily nervous. Taking a deep breath, I prepared to knock on the door. The door of the room was opened from inside at that moment. You are? The woman's eyes were puzzled and unfamiliar. Her face had wrinkles and her hat had silver threads. But at a glance, I recognized her. The face that had been blurred by days and nights of longing became clear again. I choked out, "Mom." My mom was stunned. She stared at my face. Tears gradually appeared in her cloudy eyes. "Is it Naomi?" I nodded my head fiercely. "Mom. I miss you so much." Her embrace is still so warm. I can't stop crying. "What's going on here?" My dad came out pulling the tractor trailer. My mom sobbed and told him. Naomi's back. His hand shook, and the cigarette he held in his fingertips fell to the ground. "Is it really Naomi?" Seeing me nod, he also read in his eyes. "It's good to be back. It's good to be back." "Dad, Mom, what are you doing?" A clear young girl's voice came at that moment. My mom's crying gave a start. I also looked in the direction where the voice came from. A girl about my age was wearing pajamas and had sleepy eyes. Like she was woken up. She was full of impatience. Wiping her tears, my mom introduced to the young girl. "Arya. This is your sister." And to me, "This is your sister Arya." Where did I get a sister? Arya's face collapsed. Her single eyelid hanging down, revealing a bit of meanness. I was also a bit puzzled. "Mom and Dad gave me a sister who is this big." It's the one Mom and Dad lost before you." This answer made Arya look at me with more intense hostility in her eyes. She gave me a death glare. "You adopted me because you lost her. So now that she's back, are you going to kick me out?" "No, Arya. You and Naomi are our daughters." "I don't believe you." Arya's eyes reddened. "She's your biological child." "I'm not. And you'll surely feel more sorry for her." Arya broke down and cried. My mom wiped her tears. My dad, who was so quiet, also looked at Arya, his face full of pain. As far as I can remember, this is how my mom and dad coaxed me every time I lost my temper when I was little. But now, they circled around another child. I became an outsider. Arya cried for a long time. It wasn't until an hour later that she fell asleep under the covers. Mom and Dad didn't notice me, still standing in the doorway. "Naomi. Arya is spoiled by us. Don't be mad at her. Okay?" I nodded my head. Inside, bitterness spreads. The words of apology are full of defense of Arya. And I come on in. I follow my parents in. The house is set up differently than before, with new furniture. I sat down on the couch and Mom and Dad poured me water. Then looking at each other without words. The euphoria of our first meeting had passed, and a decade of strangeness stood between us. My dad scratched his head awkwardly and turned on the TV. In the evening, Mom and Dad cooked a big table, then went to call Arya to get up for dinner. This family has her but not me. I have me but not her. If you leave her behind, I will starve to death. Arya's voice was shrill. Mom and Dad were instantly heartbroken. with a bowl full of rice and vegetables. Mom and Dad carried the bowl into Arya's room. Arya, be good. Have a bite. Okay? If you starve your body, Mom and Dad will feel sorry for you. Yes. Arya, don't you know how much Mom and Dad love you? Mom and Dad have always raised you as their own daughter. I also heard them deliberately lowering their voices. Don't worry. Even if she comes back, you'll still be unique. A table full of food suddenly lost its aroma. I put down my chopsticks. The wind blew in through the window. I rubbed my arms. It was a bit cold. And a bit aggravating. Mom and Dad, who used to only love me, don't seem to love me anymore. Waiting for the food to get cold, Mom and Dad had finally gotten Arya happy. They walked out with empty bowls. Seeing me, both of them were stunned. Naomi, have you eaten enough? Uh-huh. I nodded my head. Then you should get some rest. Okay. I answered and then asked. Mom, Dad, where am I going to sleep? Sleep, cries of sleep. My mom looked embarrassed. There are only 2 rooms in the house. One for Mom and Dad and one for Arya. I'll go talk to Arya and you guys can squeeze in for the night. She walked to the door of Arya's room. Arya. That. Before she could say anything, Arya threw out a pillow. I don't agree. The pillow hit my mom's head. But she didn't get angry at all. Picking up the pillow and looking at me with difficulty. My mom, whom I had missed for 10 years, was too humbled to be in front of Arya. I don't want to make it difficult for her. I squeeze out a smile. It's okay, Mom. I'll just go out and live there. How expensive it is to go out to live. She subconsciously said back. I wanted to say I don't need her to spend money. But she then said, there is no such thing as going home and still living outside. The simple words made my nose sore. Yes, I'm home. I'm home. Maybe Mom and Dad just haven't reacted yet. And when they do, they'll be as nice to me as they were when I was a kid. I was put in the utility room. Only a few square feet of the utility room barely made a place to sleep. My mom spread the quilt on the floor. Naomi, you can stay here for the night. I'll try to persuade Daria tomorrow. My mom was full of apologies. I answered with a low voice. Yes. I understand how hard it is for her. But I'm also a little aggravated. That was originally my room. The old house is not soundproof. Lying on the floor, I can clearly hear the sound of Grandma and Grandpa putting on the TV upstairs. The sound of stir-frying and cooking in the next building. The sound of uncles and aunts downstairs criticizing their children's homework. And the sound of parents coaxing Arya again. I wrapped the covers around my body. For 10 years, I had looked forward to reuniting with my mom and dad every day. But at this moment, I felt that, perhaps, I shouldn't have come back. The cell phone screen lit up at this moment. When I opened my cell phone, I saw that in the family group, my adoptive parents had AIT me, asking me how it felt to be back home. Happy or not? Happy. I did not hesitate to say back. But I couldn't help but feel shy. That's good. Naomi, I just transferred a few $100,000 to your bank card. So feel free to use it. And it's okay to take it to honor your parents. No matter what. Don't aggravate yourself. Looking at my adoptive parents' words, the tears in my eyes were completely uncontrollable, touched and heartbroken. I wiped my tears and tried hard to squeeze out a smile. It's okay. Even if my real parents don't love me, I still have my adoptive parents who love me. A few more words with my adoptive parents. I clicked on the chat screen of the only person in the family group who wasn't talking. Send to message, brother. Are you still mad at me? When I decided to go back to my family of origin, my adoptive parents were very upset. But both expressed understanding. Because I had said more than once. The mom and dad I remembered didn't have any money. But they loved me very much. It must have been very painful for them not to be able to find me for so many years. I have to go back. But this is also my other home. But my foster brother Eric doesn't agree. He threatened that if I went back, I wouldn't have a brother. But I left anyway. The message I sent sank into the ocean. And my heart sank with it. I fell asleep with my cell phone in my arms. When I woke up the next day, one of my parents was filling Arya's buns and soy milk. One handed her her school bag, telling her, "Slow down on the road, haha." Seeing me, the smiles on all three faces tight, and their expressions became uncomfortable. It was as if I was an outsider, breaking their peaceful lives. As if to ease the embarrassment, my mom pulled out a smile. That, "Naomi, since you're back, why don't you find a class to attend? Work?" I was puzzled at first, and then quickly realized that they thought I must have had a hard time during the years I was trafficked, and didn't have the conditions to go to school. But since they knew that the days of being trafficked were bad, why didn't they care about me a single word since I came back? With a face full of aggression, I deflated my mouth and spoke up gamely. "I want to go to school too." I told them that I was going to school too, but they directly misinterpreted it to mean something else. Arya was the first to be sarcastic. "You want to go to school? Do you know how much money I spent to get into UNHI high school? Do you deserve it?" She was full of contempt. Mom and Dad also immediately sank their faces. "Naomi, you haven't gone to school before. It must cost a lot of money to get into UNHI. How can our family have that kind of condition? Can you understand something? I know UNHI high school. It's near the Lin Cheng High School that I went to. All aspects are a great deal worse than Lin Cheng High School, but for the current family conditions, to bear the tuition of UNHI, it is also very difficult." Looking at my mom and dad in front of me, I felt strange for the first time. Putting my hands on my side tightened. I looked at my parents and asked rhetorically, "Why can Arya be able to? But I can't?" Upon hearing this, Mom and Dad showed a sense of weakness. But soon enough, this hint of weakness turned into anger. "Naomi, why are you comparing yourself to Arya? She's your sister. Can't you love her? Love her, and pamper her as much as we do?" My dad growled angrily, spittle spewing out. My mom chimed in, "That's right. During the years you were away, Arya was at home with us. You don't even know how to feel for us when you're back." The words of accusation dispersed the remaining warmth in my heart. I pulled the corner of my mouth with difficulty. "How should I feel sorry for you? You, just listen to Mom and Dad. Go to the factory to work. Now into the factory can be popular. Overtime and overtime every month can get a few thousand. By then you can support yourself, not to mention. But also for Arya the book. Obviously still the same face. But deep in the memory of my parents only full of love for me. In front of the eyes of my parents only shrewd calculations. Naomi, listen to me. Mom and Dad are doing this for your own good. Like a slap in the date." My mom took my hand with the intention of persuading me. The attachment to my parents inside me was completely shattered. I inferently broke away from her hand and interrupted her words. "I am now studying at Lin Cheng High School." When the words Lin Cheng High School came out, the three people in front of me froze. After a short period of time, they came back to their senses. Lin Cheng High School. That was an aristocratic school. After the surprise, Mom and Dad became curious for the first time about the decade I was trafficked. "Is it possible that you were adopted by a rich family?" Their cloudy eyes filled with greed. I was wary and shook my head. "No. Before, I almost had my legs broken by traffickers. And after I escaped, I worked as a maid in a rich man's house. I was telling the truth. Although I called out to my adoptive parents as Mom and Dad, I wasn't officially adopted by them. My previous words were self-ignored by them. They were lost and contemptuous. "We are a proper family. How can we work as servants? It's a disgrace to our old Chen family." Arya ate the meat bun and skimmed her lips. "That's right. If this spreads out, I won't even have the face to go to school." Saying that, she looked at my face, while jealousy rose in her eyes. The words that came out of her mouth were even more unpleasant. "What maid? I think it's a mistress." These words were not only an insult to me, but also to my adoptive parents. I glared at Arya. Apologize. I don't mind being ignored, treated coldly, or mocked. But insulting my foster parents and foster brother? No way. Before Arya could react, Mom and Dad had already spoken, yelling at me. Arya was just talking off the top of her head. Why are you being mean to her? Look at how you scared her. That's right. Why have you become so ignorant now? My parents, who used to take care of me, are now on the opposite side of me, treating me as an enemy. Maybe I've become numb. I don't feel any heartache anymore. With a cold smile, I pulled the corner of my mouth. I crossed over to them and left downstairs. It was almost time for class, so I had to go to school first. When school is over, I'll come here to pack up and leave. Since I'm not welcome in this house, I'm leaving. Today's time seems to be passing especially slowly. It was hard to make it to the end of school. Only then did I realize that it was pouring rain outside at some point. In the past, in the Ning family, there was a driver to take me to school. Now I have to rely on myself. I rubbed my classmate's umbrella to reach the bus stop, but my body was still inevitably half wet. While rubbing my arms and waiting for the bus, I saw my parents holding a big umbrella in the rainy fog, protecting Arya in the center, fearing that she would get a little wet. The cold wine dropped with raindrops straight to the bottom of my heart. I retracted my eyes and got on the bus. When I got home, my parents and Daria were already there. As soon as I entered the house, I smelled the strong odor of brown sugar and ginger water. On the couch, Mom and Dad were coaxing Arya to drink brown sugar water. Hearing the commotion, they looked over, somewhat awkwardly and tacitly. They pretended not to see me. I walked straight to the utility room, ready to grab my stuff and leave. But then I saw that the zipper of the bag I brought back was opened, and the clothes and accessories inside were nowhere to be found. Those were the things my foster parent had packed for me by hand. Anger instantly rising, I walked out and asked, "Where's my stuff?" The questioning words caused heartbreak to cross my mom and dad's faces. Arya took a sip of brown sugar water with a spoon in my mom's hand and spoke carelessly. "I didn't expect you. A lowly servant clothes and jewelry are still all brand name. I thought those things were more suitable for me, so I brought them over." Her words were full of deservedness. Tightening my fists, I went straight into her room to look for something. Once inside, I saw a bed full of my things. I was ready to pack my things. Arya, however, rushed in. "You're not allowed to touch my stuff." "Your stuff? I gave you face." I pushed her away. It didn't take much force, but she fell straight to the ground. "Ah!" Ground screamed out. Before I could react, my dad was already on fire and rushed to me. Slap a slap threw in my face, and then blocked in front of Arya. Angrily growled at me. "You give me to get out." My face was on fire. I looked at my father who had nothing but hate for me in front of me, and my mom who was hugging Arya with tears falling from her heart. I only felt miserable. "Get lost." Tugging hard at the corners of my mouth, I shoved all my stuff into my bag and turned to leave. Like he didn't expect me to be so tough. The anger on my dad's face increased. When I was about to step out of the threshold, his voice came from behind me. "Naomi, if you leave, don't ever come back." Coldly laughing, I quickened my pace. The rain still didn't stop. Instead, it had a tendency to get heavier and heavier. I plunged headlong into the rain. Only when I couldn't see the location of Chen's house did I stop and take shelter from the rain under the eaves of a closed store. Coldness drilled into my limbs from every pore of my body, and only my swollen cheeks radiated a burning heat. I took out my cell phone, intending to find a hotel to stay in first. Just as I wiped off the water droplets on my cell phone screen, I saw a message from my foster parents. "Naomi, it's raining today. Take care to stay warm. Do you want Mom and Dad to send you some thicker clothes over? If you don't have enough money, tell us and we'll transfer it to you." Every word is full of concern. I didn't even cry when I was ostracized, treated coldly, and counted in the Chen family. But at this moment, the tears fell out uncontrollably. I cried as I replied to Mom and Dad's messages. After replying, I couldn't help but click on the chat window with my foster brother Eric. The chat history was still stuck in yesterday. I was so bent on going back to the Chen family. He should be so angry that he doesn't want to care about me. Right? Sucking in my nose. I was about to press the back button. Instead, the voice call came through at that moment. It was Eric. I immediately pressed the answer button. Did you know you were wrong? His voice was cold. But I felt warm. Brother. I was wrong. Suppressed choking was keenly heard by him. What's wrong with you? Is not aggrieved? No. I denied it. But he didn't believe me. When he opened his mouth again, his voice was tinted with obvious anger. People who dare to bully me. I'm afraid they don't want to live. Wait. I will go to support you. Saying that, he hung up the phone. Afraid that he would directly rush to the Chen family, I quickly sent him a location. He came quickly. Why are you soaked in the rain? He took off his jacket and draped it over me. Immediately after, saw my red and swollen cheeks. His handsome face was suddenly covered with a coldness. Go. I'm going to help you settle the score. Brother. Don't go. I stood still. This slap. As I returned the Chen family's birth grace. No way. If I hurt you, I must pay the price. He stubbornly wanted to go to the Chen family. I could only pull his hand. Crying and begging, brother, please. He has always been obedient to me. As expected. This time, against my tearful eyes, he still compromised. Sighing, he took my hand. Let's go. Let's go home. Seeing me come back, Ning's parents were first surprised, and then furious. The princess we hold in our hearts was treated like this. Really don't know how to die. After 10 years of longing, I finally returned to the Chen family. Originally, returning to the Ning family like this, I was still a little embarrassed. But at this moment, looking at my caring mom, dad, and brother, not much embarrassment was buried by warmth. They were furious and also wanted to help me to find a scene. I stopped them. Dad, Mom, brother, this slap will be taken as buying off the Chen family's affection. From now on, I will only recognize you. My tone was firm, and my mom, dad, and brother all red in their eyes. Good. Eric helped me take a few days off work and waited until the swelling on my face had basically gone down before I went to school again. He drove me himself. While waiting at the stoplight, I suddenly felt a strong gaze. Turning my head, I met Arya's eyes full of jealousy. As soon as I got off the bus, Arya ran towards me, shouting as she ran, "Ouch! Isn't this my cheap sister?" I had already decided not to have any more contact with the Chen family. At this moment, facing Arya's approach, I only felt my scalp numb. The green light was already on, but Eric was in no hurry to drive. But in a few breaths, Arya ran close. Her hand reached into the car window and tried to pull me out. But at this moment, Eric suddenly started the car. The car rushed out like an arrow. Arya, who was unguarded, directly fell into a dog's ass. Looking in the rearview mirror at her wretched appearance, I only feel incomparable pain. Hovering in the heart for many years of attachment was resolved. Study up. I am more focused and serious than before. Only this day when school was over, I just walked out of the school gate. I was stopped by Felix and Hope. What greeted me was an unspoken accusation. "You're really something too. How dare you say you won't go home?" I reminded coldly, "You're the ones who told me to get lost. We are your parents. It's normal for parents to discipline their children. It's all for your own good. It's hard not to be annoyed with us because we disciplined you. Now you're not my parents." My words made Felix and Hope lurch. And then, Hope said, "Don't make a scene." I didn't make a scene. I don't want to waste time with them. So I'll get straight to the point. What is the purpose of your coming to me? How to talk? Hope looked at me disapprovingly. Then continued. Arya is your sister. She likes your stuff. You let her have it. So what? Now you've taken the stuff away, and she's so angry she can't eat at home. So you just give it back to her and apologize. Huh? Huh. True enough. Luckily I stopped expecting anything from them a long time ago, and their behavior can't hurt me anymore. But I still wanted to know how shameless they could be. So I followed their words and asked. I apologized to her. And then what? Then you go home. Lincheng High School tuition is too expensive. Our family can't afford it. So listen to your parents and go to work in the factory to earn money to ease the burden on your family. I pushed Hope's hand away and said in a cold voice, so you guys want a free babysitter? Unfortunately, I won't fall for that. I crossed over to them and prepared to leave. Felix was so angry that he raised his hand again. If you have the guts, you can fight. I raised my chin at him. There are cameras right in front of the school. As long as you dare to fight, I dare to call the police. Then everyone will know that you are going to beat your own daughter to death for the sake of your adopted daughter. As I recall, Felix is very facetious. And he and Hope used to fight over this when I was very young. Hearing my words, Felix's face changed dramatically. Bitchy hoof. How dare you threaten me? He grinned his teeth in hatred. You think that if I don't beat you, I won't have any way to teach you a lesson? Since you don't listen, don't blame us for not being polite. Saying that, he gave Hope a look. Hope understood. She angrily slapped her thighs. And when she opened her mouth, her voice was sharp with an unpleasant wail. You unfilial daughter ah. Even if our family is poor and gave you your rich life, you can't degrade yourself and shamelessly go to be a lover for someone. When she said this, her eyes were full of hatred. With a little thought, I understood their purpose. They thought that since I was working as a servant, I must have been too embarrassed to tell others about my servant status at school. So they created rumors and smeared me as a way to ruin me and achieve the goal of me dropping out of school to earn money for them. It was like being entangled by a poisonous snake. And the chill wrapped around me so much that I was about to lose my breath. Even if they favor Arya. But I originally thought. To me, they more or less consider a little blood kinship. But it turns out that when people are bad, there is no bottom line. Taking a deep breath and suppressing the uneasiness in my heart, I spoke inferently to Felix and Hope. Where did this strange man come from? In order to blackmail money. They really do whatever they can. They can act. So can I. Almost the next second after my words landed, some of the onlookers began to speak up for me. Naomi is the pearl of the Ning family. How could she have parents like you? Naomi is the jewel of the Ning family. How could she have parents like you? This school was built by Naomi's parents. What's the point of being a lover? Don't they do background checks nowadays? The expected scene of me being scolded didn't happen. Felix and Hope were confused. What palimpsest? Aren't you the maid? I smiled, formally introduced myself. I'm the Ning family's daughter-in-law. Naomi. They froze. Unbelievably. They mumbled. Thousand gold? Ignoring their dumbfoundedness, I lifted my feet to leave. I didn't get more than a few steps before I saw Eric running towards me. Sorry I'm late. They didn't do anything to you, did they? Don't worry. Brother. I'm fine. I'm fine. I've suffered a lot during my first few years of being trafficked. Then I was adopted. And I was grateful and well behaved. But I've never been the kind of person to tolerate being bullied. Seeing that I was really fine, he was relieved. And then his cold eyes swept to the security guards at the school's entrance. Get rid of these two troublemakers. Felix and Hope were pushed away by the security guards with ashen faces. Felix and Hope were pushed away by the security guards. I got into the car and went home with Eric. For 3 days in a row, Eric picked me up and dropped me off at school. Only after a lot of persuasion, he agreed to let the driver take me to school like before. I don't know if Felix and Hope were watching Eric's movements from the shadows. This day, as soon as I got off the bus, they came running. Unlike the previous coercion, I now played the affection card. Naomi, you haven't had breakfast yet, have you? These are your favorite meat buns from when you were a kid. Mom made them herself. Eat up. Why are you wearing so little? What if you freeze? You don't know what your father and I have been through since you were kidnapped. We're family. We're all connected by our bones. Don't be angry with Mom and Dad. Okay? They rambled on as if they were a pair of parents who loved their child dearly. But I knew they loved Arya. They did show a love that I had once only dreamed of. But now, I didn't need it. I ignored their displays of affection. But after a few days of persistence, I couldn't hold out and didn't show up again. On the weekend, I went shopping with my girlfriends as before. At the luxury store, I saw Arya. Arya, we don't have any money. What are we doing here? The one who was talking should be Arya's colleague. But it's not a crime to look at her. She was looking at a dress with an obsessive look on her face. The dress I brought back to Chen's house had the same model in it. It was snatched away by Arya, and I snatched it back. But I always felt that the waiters looked at us with contempt. I dog-eyed thing. When I get rich, I'll directly buy this store, Arya said, and suddenly saw me. At once, her eyes lit up. Like a dog encountering a meat and potatoes, she darted over. Unlike before when she was full of hostility. At this moment, she looked at me with as much eagerness as she could muster. Sister, I fancy a few bags. You buy me, okay? I raised my eyebrows. Which ones? This one. This one. And this one, she pointed with her hand. Good guy. All are the most expensive style. A few bags down, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hooked his lips. I said, well, you can choose. I'll pay the bill. Said. I handed the waiter a card. Good luck. Thank you, sister. Said. She continued to pick. And my girlfriend and I acidly glanced at each other. Out of the clothing store. We sat not far away to observe. Half an hour later, tired of picking, Arya was ready to leave with a big bag and was stopped by the waitress. I'm sorry, miss. You can't take these things away without paying for them. Arya immediately retorted. Didn't Naomi leave a card with that idiot? Swipe it. Heh. Sister on the front. Damas on the back. Arya really thinks I'm stupid. But Ms. Ning didn't leave a password. The waiter patiently explained. But Arya wouldn't listen. I think you waiters just want to covet my bag. I don't care. I'm leaving with my bag today, she said. And rushed outside. My girlfriends and I ate dessert while watching the drama. When we were almost done eating, the farce was about to end. It was only when the police stepped in and almost took Arya away that she subsided. Felix. Hope came to see me again. Knowing it's no use showing kindness. This time, they got straight to the point. We're your real parents. We gave birth to you and raised you for 6 years. After you were abducted and sold. We even spent a lot of money to find you. Now that you've disowned us, you have to pay money to compensate us. Right? Heh. It's the first time I've seen strange parents who kidnap with blood relations. How much do you want? $500,000. Oh, no. I'm just curious. I have no intention of paying. I've learned that they adopted Arya the same year I was abducted. In other words, they didn't feel bad for long when they lost me and transferred all their love to Arya. If you don't give it to us, we'll haunt you every day. How dare you try pestering? The bodyguard stepped forward at the right time and blocked them away. They instantly shrank their necks and left gray lie. The bodyguards were arranged for me by Eric, who knew as well as he did that the Chen family's mischief would definitely not be small. Because of the bodyguards, there was no way for Felix, Hope, and Arya to get close to me for the rest of the day. But for a few days in a row, I saw Arya carrying an entry-level all-family bag and hanging around Lin Shanghai School. So Ali. I had the driver pull up in front of her. As soon as she saw me, she immediately picked up the bag and showed it off. Naomi. Look. This is the bag Mom and Dad just bought me. She knows how to kill and kill. A bag of more than 10. Zaro is already expensive for the Chen family. The fact that Felix and Hope would buy it for her shows that they really spoil her. If I had just returned to the Chen family, I would have been upset by this. But now, I wouldn't be. I asked Arya, so what? You're showing off? Shouldn't I be showing off? I got your room. Your mom and dad. Your everything. At that, I smiled. So what do you think I should envy you? My adoptive parents love me just as much. And any random accessory on my body costs more than the bag you're dying to get. So, should I envy you for being poor? When my words left my mouth, Arya was directly exasperated and cried. I rarely flaunt my wealth. But at this point I thought, flaunting my wealth can be really cool. I didn't expect to come home and see people I didn't want to see. Felix and Hope stood in the living room of the Ning family villa, looking restrained and full of envy. They scowled and opened their mouths. It wasn't easy for us to give birth to Naomi. You guys snatched her away. You have to compensate us. Right? It was obviously because they were biased that I left. Mom and Dad obviously didn't want to talk to them and just asked them how much they wanted. They didn't expect them to ask for more. $2 million. You guys are so rich. You can't afford $2 million. Right? I was so angry that I rushed in to argue with them. I was so excited that I bumped into a vase on the shelf. Splat. The vase fell to the ground. Felix, Hope and my foster parents moved at the same time. What a loser thing. This vase looks expensive. Father Chen accused me. But my mom, Dad and brother gathered around me at the same time. Are you hurt? Why are you so careless? Housekeeper. Arrange for the shelf at the door to be removed. It's too redundant. The love my foster parents and foster brother showed me contrasted sharply with Felix and Hope's rebuke. The better they treated me, the more embarrassed Felix. Hope looked. I was fine. After shaking my head soothingly at my mom, Dad, and brother, I looked at Felix. Hope. I don't have any money to ask for. So you guys can just die. You're a heartless bastard. You're coming back with us. Felix had a fierce look on his face. And Hope was somehow lost in thought as she watched her adoptive mom hold my hand. I wanted to dislike her. But Mom and Dad already clapped their hands soothingly. Eric also stepped forward and patted the head. Leave this matter to us. Good boy. His eyes had the power to soothe the heart. The restlessness in my heart was instantly erased. Eric is concise. Up to $500,000. If you want it, you have to take it. If you don't want it, get out. Felix and Hope didn't comply and wanted to make a scene. They didn't give them a chance to make a scene. Eric gave them a look. And the security guards immediately stepped forward and took them outside. Felix and Hope, who were afraid of not getting anything, quickly said, $500,000 is $500,000. When the housekeeper handed over the $500 in cash, the foster mother reminded, once you accept this $500 Naomi will have nothing to do with you. Felix nodded repeatedly. It was Hope who looked at me with an obscure expression. She looked at me and was about to say something. But in the end, she didn't say anything and followed Felix to leave. I coldly looked at the direction they left. They'd better be true to their word and just pay this time. Otherwise, the Ning family is a big family. And it's not like anyone can blackmail them, just because they say so. I thought that with this amount of money, they would be satisfied. But I didn't expect that Arya would hit Eric's idea. It's not hard to know what university the young master of the Ning family is studying in. I made an appointment with Eric to go out for dinner together in the evening. When the driver dropped me off in front of his university, I happened to see Arya standing in front of Eric scratching her head. She was dressed very differently from before. The clothes on her body were upgraded to a higher level. And it was obvious that the $500,000 had played a role. At this moment, she stood in front of Eric with a shyness. "Eric." The moment her words left her mouth, Eric coldly said, "Get lost." Arya was stunned, unwillingly want to continue to speak. Eric has already raised his fist. "Don't force me to beat you." His fists pinched and slacked. Arya in the end is afraid. Paleface did not dare to say anything. At this point, her wandering eyes fell on me. Realizing that I had surrounded her in the process of hooking up with Eric, her face instantly turned green. "Bitch," she opened her mouth to curse me. Eric kicked her directly in the leg. "Ah!" She screamed miserably and sat on the ground. Eric looked at her fixedly and warned, "If you dare to say one more word about her, I'll let you never stand up again." At those words, Arya shivered. She didn't dare to scold me again. But she still wasn't willing. "She's just a nuisance. Even her real parents don't want her. Why are you so good to her?" "Because she is worth it." The sound of the words slammed into my heart and made my mind shake. Eric was nice to me. But he wasn't a man who was good at expressing his emotions in words. More often than not, he uses actions. However, this wasn't the first time he said he liked me. My first encounter with him was the 5th year after I was trafficked. After being abducted, I was first sold by traffickers to a family that abandoned me when they had their own biological children. Plus, I was always thinking about going home. So I went around in circles, changed cities, and finally ended up in an orphanage. I met Eric, a runaway, a proud and arrogant teenager. He left home after a fight with his parents and vowed to make his own way in the world. But he was too young to go back to his parents and make peace with them. Even though he had been cheated, had his only money stolen, and had been beaten and scolded. That's when I met him. He was so pathetic with his bruises and his stomach crumbling with hunger. I handed him my dinner, a cold steamed bun. But he was all violent and threw my steamed bun straight into the stinking gutter. I looked at my dinner and cried. And he cried instead. Said he'd pay me back when he made money later. Then he followed me. I went back to the orphanage and he lived in a broken house outside the orphanage. From then on, every day I would secretly leave a little bit of unit and rice to bring to him. When he recovered, he found an odd job. The pay was not high, but instead he was able to buy me good food in turn. We got along like this for 2 months. One day, Eric suddenly disappeared. Not long after, his parents came looking for him, saying that Eric originally had a serious mental illness and was originally in a better state. After they found him and picked him up, his mental illness got worse again, and they wanted me to help him. Naturally, I was happy to do so. I was able to eat and wear warm clothes at Ning's house, and I was happy every day. When Eric's state got better, and I was planning to leave, Eric spoke up and asked me to stay. When Ning's parents asked why, he said, because he liked it. From then on, I became a member of the Ning family. We were going home after a late night snack. And in front of the house, we happened to meet up with my parents who were coming back from a walk. The family was having a good time, ready to enter the door, but saw Arya crouching not far away. It was as if she was afraid that we would just let someone drop her off. As soon as she saw my parents, she said, "You treat Naomi as your own daughter. But she wants to be your daughter-in-law. You don't know that, do you? She's in love with Eric." At her words, Mom, Dad, and Eric both paused. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't in a relationship with Eric. But for some reason, I felt a little guilty. Fearing that Mom and Dad would get angry, I quickly spoke out to explain. "Mom, Dad." Before I could say the words of explanation, Mom and Dad had already come back to their senses. "Really? You are really together?" Mom's eyes are full of surprise. I was a bit confused. "No." Without giving me a chance to speak, she already happily patted Eric's shoulder. "Good boy." "Great." Dad also chimed in. "I was worried that Naomi really thought of you as a brother. but now I'm relieved. My mom looked at me and explained, when we were going to get you an adoption certificate. Eric refused to agree. So we had no choice but to put you under a friend's name. After waiting for so many years, Eric finally got what he wanted. Listening to Mom and Dad's words, Arya's face twisted with jealousy. I, on the other hand, looked at Eric in confusion. When he didn't agree to his parents adopting me, I thought he was sad that he didn't accept me as his family. But I didn't realize that since then he's been. My cheeks warmed uncontrollably at the thought. Sensing my gaze, he looked over. When he met my eyes, he turned his head away uncomfortably. Only the tips of his ears flushed. Felix. Hope again. With Arya's quest for designer labels, $500,000 wasn't enough. This time, they asked for another $500,000 and promised it would be the last time. Instead of spoiling them anymore, Mom and Dad just called the police and revealed to the company they work for that they forced their biological daughter away for their adopted daughter. Both of them lost their jobs. Having learned their lesson, the two men no longer dared to come to the Ning family to make trouble. My life returned to peace. Everyday school life to points one line. High school study is very heavy. Immersed in learning. I almost every day as soon as I finish eating, I go upstairs to study. On this day, after dinner, my parents called out to me, Naomi, they were about to say something. I had a bad feeling. What's wrong? Something happened to the Chen family. Arya was like a demon, thinking about luxury goods every day, forcing her parents to buy them for her. At first they still had money, but after their savings were almost gone, they didn't have any money to buy for her. And then Mom paused and couldn't bear to say any more. Or Dad continued. Arya knew that her parents had insurance, so she pushed her mom into the traffic when she crossed the street once. And she didn't know whether she was alive or dead. Even though I decided long ago to cut ties with the Chen family, my heart still trembled with it. Don't be anxious. We will accompany you to the hospital to see her, said. They are going to take me out. Looking at the three people with nervous faces in front of me, the tears in my eyes still fell uncontrollably. I clearly shouldn't have gone. I clearly have severed my relationship with them. But I still went. In the hospital, Felix called the police. And as they took Arya away, she broke down and screamed hysterically at Felix. You guys are just stupid. You guys deserve to die. You deserve it if your own daughter doesn't hurt me. In an instant, he looked like he had aged a few years, blacked out and fainted. At that moment, the door of the resuscitation room also opened. Hope, who was pushed out by the nurses, looked at me tearfully. She didn't die. Broke a leg. Her body hadn't slowed down from the anesthesia and she couldn't move. Looking at me with guilt in her eyes. Guilt I didn't need. Time flies when you are working hard. When I was not studying, I would see Felix and Hope hiding not far away from me from time to time. More often than not, Hope was alone. She was on crutches, watching me from afar. I was oblivious to it all. On the day after the entrance exam, Mom, Dad, and Eric were waiting for me outside the exam room. They didn't say anything but handed me a bouquet of colorful flowers and told me that I was the best. After receiving the flowers, I looked around and sure enough, I spotted Hope behind a big tree again. After saying hi to Mom, Dad, and Derek, I walked over. Naomi, she was thrilled to see me walk over. I'm sorry, Naomi. I was larded up before. The sound of crying made me unable to hear the words that followed her. But I knew that she was apologizing to me and wanted to make up with me. I spoke coldly at her. If you really want me to be good, then never show up in front of my eyes again. The damage was done. I didn't need crocodile tears. On the way back, Dad drove the car. Mom sang along with the music. I sat in the back with Eric. His bony hands clasped mine tight. I looked in the rearview mirror at Hope's silhouette, gradually moving away. For the first time, I smiled from the bottom of my heart. The rest of my life's journey would be filled with a lot of love and an unbelievably bright future.